Hey there! I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and talk about loot boxes! Yay! And if you can't detect sarcasm or abject despair, this is not a video I really wanted to make. There are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I really do not want drama on this channel, and let's face it, loot boxes are drama. But second of all, and probably most importantly, I just don't feel qualified for this. I'm not a game journalist. I don't have the same overview of the gaming industry itself that, say, Jim Sterling or Total Biscuit does, and I don't even have the sort of breadth of experience with different games that someone like Angry Joe has. I am a very niche player. I have a certain type of game that I play. I play them so damn slowly I don't even go through them very fast, and honestly, I'm probably the last person to have an important opinion on this subject. So why the hell am I actually making this video then? To be honest, I feel semi-obliged because I of course did a video unboxing Shadow of War, and that is a game that has loot boxes. Now in that video I did state quite clearly that I do not like loot boxes, and I encouraged everyone to not buy loot boxes, and indeed wait before buying the game until they had seen reviews from trusted reviewers that could tell them whether or not the loot boxes had an effect. But apparently for some people that was not strong condemnation enough. Some people were a little confused as to what I meant, although I suspect that unless I'd actually just set fire to the box, put blue war paint on and screamed death to Warner Brothers, some people would probably have been, well, I'm not totally sure where you stand on this issue. So I really do feel the need to clarify that I do not like loot boxes. But I also want to lend my voice to the other voices out there that are saying this is a bad thing, and just say that in actual fact I understand why people are so worried about this. Possibly more than any other thing, more than microtransactions, more than day one DLC, more than a host of other things that we all hate. Loot boxes really are not just the next step, they're a dangerous step. Now I will admit I've not always thought that. I've been very indifferent to them, to be honest, since the start. I of course played a game, Overwatch, and the fact that they had loot boxes didn't really bother me. I pretty much was in line with the Total Biscuit way of thinking. It's just cosmetics, I can avoid it, it doesn't matter, in spite of the fact that the cosmetics in that game were actually a lot of fun, and I found myself really wanting to get something every time I got a loot box for leveling. I didn't see the problem with people buying them if they wanted quicker access, because it was just cosmetics, it wasn't pay to win. So that's probably where I was back then. I know Jim Sterling was against them, but he'd kind of accepted that he'd lost that battle. But he didn't like them because, well, for him, the cosmetics were a big part of the game. It was an important part of the game. And I sort of understand that. Even though it's less important to me, of course I do play games like Warframe and even Overwatch where I did enjoy the skins. I enjoyed the cosmetics. And I can see for some people it would be one of the most important things. And you know, who am I to judge? If that's why you're playing a game, you know, hey, that is fine. So I could understand why Jim was a lot more anti-loot box. Oddly enough, I ended up quitting Overwatch because of the loot boxes, but not for the usual reasons. They added a new system whereby you could get 3 extra loot boxes per week by winning 9 arcade mode matches. Now, arcade mode was this sort of different versions of the game, different rules, and they were modes that I generally did not enjoy. Occasionally they would throw something in that I did enjoy, but for the most part it was something I didn't enjoy, so I didn't want to do it. But I kind of felt like I had to. I didn't have to, but I felt like I had to, because there were 3 loot boxes just there, mocking me, waiting for me to claim them. And so every single week when it refreshed, I would go off and play several matches a night on arcade mode until I got my loot box. And not only was it a mode that I didn't enjoy, I was generally playing against people who did enjoy it. They played it a lot, which meant I would probably have to play maybe 20 matches at least to get 9 wins. And that was 20 matches where I would be cranky and irritable. And I don't play games to be cranky and irritable, despite what you might think. And so I found myself trying to ignore it. I found myself trying to play the normal game, and yet I just couldn't. Just knowing it was there, knowing those 3 loot boxes were there for me to claim, drove me nuts. And in the end, I just realised I wasn't enjoying the game because of these loot boxes, and so I just uninstalled it. And I've not regretted it, which is weird because I really enjoyed playing the game, and I loved all these short clips, but I was immediately happier doing other things. However, getting back to the real problem of loot boxes, what really began to change my mind as to whether or not loot boxes were more than just something I could ignore, but rather something that was potentially harmful, was something that Jim Sterling said. He pointed out that it was gambling, and that for people with a gambling compulsion, these kind of systems were very, very hard to resist. Now, I do not suffer from that compulsion, but I can empathise with people that do. It's very easy for people to say, well, that's their problem, I don't have that, so, why should I care? Well, the fact is, there are plenty of people who do suffer this compulsion, and we take it seriously in other walks of life. We do regulate gambling because we know it can be harmful to a lot of people. And if you're the sort of person who's going to sort of say, well, they should control their impulses, they need to be strong like me, I think that's very short-sighted. Compulsions come in all forms. I mean, I will bring your attention back to the example I just gave you about why I quit Overwatch. The compulsion to play a form of the game that I didn't even enjoy just to get those 3 things out of the way was kind of overpowering. That compulsion to get rid of those 3 boxes and fill them so that I could move on and do what I wanted to do was overpowering to me. That's not a gambling compulsion, but it is a compulsion of sorts. And how many people have played a game like Civilization and said to themselves, I need the toilet, but just one more turn. And 4 hours later, you're still sat there, sweat pouring off your brow, your legs clenched together as hard as possible, still needing the toilet because you just one more turn. Now, for people who have compulsions like mine, it's not harmful. Well, the only real harm is it kind of got me to play a mode that I didn't enjoy for a few weeks before I finally flipped and just said, I've had enough, and stopped playing. And for people who get the compulsion to do one more turn in Civilization, it just trains their bladder to be bigger, I suppose. I mean, the price you pay for that compulsion is to play a game that you really enjoy even more. Unless, of course, you have an accident and then, we can discuss that. But the compulsion to gamble has very real life impact. It costs money. I mean, these loot boxes you got in Overwatch for leveling were not a problem. They were kind of cool. I really did look forward to trying to get something, get a legendary skin for my favourite character. I really did love that. So in a way, I can kind of see the pleasure people get from this. But if you've got a compulsion and you just need those, and you just want those, the temptation to spend money and then keep spending money is probably overpowering. And of course, this is dangerous. Now, I'm not suggesting we should make this kind of practice illegal. I do believe in personal responsibility. People need to be able to control themselves. If they've got a gambling issue, they need to avoid gambling establishments. But of course, we do regulate such things. We have gambling establishments for a reason. We have places where gambling happens so that people who have this compulsion can avoid them. We don't allow children to go in them. These establishments very often have to have a license. They have to have certain standards. I mean, I'm not really, this is why I don't feel qualified for this. I'm not really up on what it takes to have a gambling establishment. But we do regulate these things in most nations. So what should we do about this? Well, to be honest, this is where I fall a little short. I don't feel qualified to really make any big suggestions because, as I've said, I'm not really a game journalist, and I'm not completely up to date on all the different aspects of what is going on. It's why I always tend to look at these issues from the perspective of the game. If you think of the Creation Club for Bethesda, which, let's be honest, it's microtransactions. It is microtransactions. There really is no difference between the Creation Club and microtransactions for other games. I mean, it's not loot boxes yet, but it is microtransactions. And to me, when I looked at the Creation Club, I looked at it from the perspective of how does it affect the game? How does it affect the game that I am playing? Does it have a positive effect or does it have a negative effect? I feel qualified to judge how the Creation Club and its content will affect the game, and my enjoyment of the game, my evaluation of its inherent value. I feel qualified to talk about that. Outside of that, I feel a lot less qualified. I wouldn't say I'm an expert and can judge how this sort of system will affect the gaming industry as a whole, and I certainly wouldn't want to discuss ethical issues with microtransactions, for example. However, with loot boxes, I can acknowledge there is an ethical issue. I can acknowledge there is a potential danger. I just don't feel like I'm a qualified commentator on that subject. However, the problem is I'm watching some other YouTubers who normally comment on this and normally have great answers for what needs to be done, and they sound pretty downbeat. They sound almost defeated. It's kind of a, Angry Joe literally ended his video with, have we lost? We might have lost. This might be the norm. And this is a recurring theme, and that worries me. That does worry me when people like Angry Joe or Jim Sterling or Total Biscuit actually sound like they're about to throw in the towel and say, that's it, we're done, it's over. That tends to worry me more than, all the internet comments in the world. But at the risk of stepping over the mark, of going a little too far for my limited experience, why should this not be regulated as gambling? Why can't this come under the same heading as gambling in a casino? Why can't Valve or some other body insist that games that have this have certain standards? Don't allow children at all, completely and utterly. No children are allowed to play this game because it has hints of gambling. Why shouldn't these developers actually have to seek the same sort of licensing that a casino has? I mean, perhaps it's because it's not on a premise. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but it does seem to me that this one issue is not an issue of, the game industry needing to be told, we don't want that and we're not going to buy it. It does seem to be an issue where enough people will really not be able to resist the urge to buy into this, and thus it will be successful in spite of all the noise everyone else can make. We could all boycott all the products, but it wouldn't make as much difference as the positive revenue they're developing from the people who suffer from this particular compulsion. Can we not have this regulated? I'm not a big fan of governments coming in and regulating gaming, because very often it's a bunch of people who are 20 years older than even I am and have no idea what computer gaming is. But if it's that serious, if we might be looking at just gambling being a normal part of every single AAA title, should they not have to follow the standards? Because here's what I'm thinking. If they had to make their games adults only, and they had to conform to certain standards for certain nations, especially America, because let's face it, that's a big market. If they had to do that, or if there was some other body, like the same body that age gates games, that would regulate this, and they had to go through that, would game developers just think, it's just not worth it? I can't be bothered going there. That's just no. I mean, you'd still get some games that would go that route, but they would be the gambling games. And other games, well, they wouldn't. Surely it's time this aspect of gaming gets dealt with. It's kind of like the copyright issue that led to the DMCA, as flawed as it may be. Is it time for somebody somewhere to legislate? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm the last person that should be asked this question, which is why I'm asking the question. Or is this something that we can just deal with ourselves? Is this something where we can just say, you know what? Let's just stop buying games that have this. I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you right now. I stand by what I said with Shadow of War. Wait for the reviews. There are already reviews coming out. Some of them are saying, you know, the loot boxes aren't affecting the game. But some of them are actually saying, no, there's an entire ending that you either have to grind in what is a bit of a boring fashion for 50 hours or pay to see that ending. You know, like pay to finish rather than pay to win. I don't know if that's true. I do not know if that is true. I have actually received a review copy, so I am going to play it. I'll try and get that started, but honestly, guys, look for the people that you trust. I'm going to be waiting for Jim Sterling, Total Biscuit, Angry Joe. I'm going to be waiting for reviews from them, to be honest. That's what I'd be doing if I hadn't got a free copy. I would be waiting for them to tell me whether or not the loot boxes affect it. And I would say any game where reviewers you trust say, yeah, no, this game has been balanced in such a way that it made me want to buy loot boxes, you do not buy. If they've gone that far, if it's gone that far where you actually really feel like I've played this game for 40 hours and I want to see the ending, but I don't want to play for another 50 hours doing something over and over again that I've done so often now. I'm bored of doing that. I don't want to do it for 50 hours just to see the real ending. Then don't buy that game. And I think that, that should be done regardless of whether or not we need to do more. So please, if you're going to play a game that does have loot boxes, please, please, please wait for the reviewers to get their hands on it and play it to the end and give you a verdict and tell you if you can ignore that aspect. And I'd also suggest the very fact that review copies were not sent to people like Total Biscuit and Jim Sterling, that should actually trigger some sort of warning in your head, because it did for me. So please, wait for the reviews. I know the game looks enticing. I know it's easy for me to say that because I've already got a free copy and I get to play it when you don't. I totally know that. But imagine how frustrated you're going to be if you get to the end of, partway to the end of Shadow of War and realise you're going to have to spend more money to see the end, or you're going to have to do something that is not fun. Imagine how annoyed you're going to be. Wait a few weeks. Just wait and see. But beyond that, I still have to ask, do we need to do more? And how do we do that? I really don't have an answer, I'm afraid. So there you go. That's my voice added to the voices that are saying loot boxes are dangerous. Because I believe I am a convert to the idea that they are dangerous for certain people, and if they're dangerous for certain people, they should be regulated. Anyway, that really is all I've got to say on it, which is not a lot, I realise. I accept that I've not added anything concrete to this discussion whatsoever. I just want to lend my voice to the many others out there who are saying this is something that needs to be dealt with now. This is something that needs to be looked at and taken seriously. I'm just not sure by who. I really am not. So I'm going to leave that open. I'm going to try and read the comments. If you could possibly be polite and respectful and try not to completely flip out, that would be helpful. I do realise that's not going to happen because I accept that there are people out there who have another compulsion. and that compulsion is to, you know, scream loudly and run around like their hair's on fire. But hey, we all have our compulsions, right? We all have our compulsions. For some, it's 4 hours of trying to resist the urge to pee their pants. For others, it's to, you know, go mental.